David, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm well, against all odds, I'm fine.
Yeah, you're in New York, right?
I'm in New York City. I was out of the city for 4 months and I just got back, but I kind of missed the big drama. And New York City was, of course, an epicenter, but it's a little calmer now.
Okay.
And so everything's fine. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. It's actually been good to be back in Perth, and it's felt a little bit like another world, actually. Like the isolation of the place has made it seem like we're truly on a different planet. It's been kind of like a mini paradise. It's in its own little bubble, which I'm not taking for granted, and I'm really grateful for. And we've had our own little dramas. My dad did get very unwell, actually, like with a pneumonia thing that looked like COVID. He was in the COVID ward and nearly died from it, and it was full on. At the same time, he recovered, and he's had big blessings from it. And we've had our own little dramas at the same time. It's been like paradise here and really beautiful, and we've been taking the blessings in disguise, the kind of silver linings that people keep talking about. We've been seeing an abundance of that, and yeah, very grateful. At the same time, super concerned and really paying attention to what's going on in the world, which I'd love to hear your views on what's going on. What are you seeing? Feeling?
Well, I'm in New York City my apartment's on the East River. So what I see right now is the East River and Queens,
Yeah.
literally. And there's boats going up and down and it looks pretty normal and kind of even, pleasant in appearance. So there's a lot of levels to what's going on. And I think you summed it up pretty well, that there can be a strange juxtaposition of almost very positive states of mind and kind of retreat type of feelings that people get, and then real panic, the other end of the spectrum. And nobody, there's most people I know are navigating within those parameters, including me. I've been healthy, relatively safe. I appreciate the fact that your dad was sick. Nobody that close to me has gone through that kind of drama. But at the same time, the U.S. is really the epicenter of a kind of pre-cataclysmic energetic. There's a feeling of impending working through of things that like we're just stuck for a long time. It's like, almost reminds me of like, I don't know if you've ever done ayahuasca, but there's films about it. And The Purge, there's this film
I've
I
been
just
hearing
watched.
that a lot.
Yeah, The Purging, just wildly purging. So, I don't have a lot of predictions available. That's, I think you'd have to be pretty wise or foolish, one or the other, to make predictions right now, because the uncertainty seems to be part of the equation.
Yeah.
Part of the experience that we're having.
Yeah, the big purge. And I mean, whether we look at it from a Hindu vantage point of the Kali Yuga, or like we've known shit's gonna hit the fan sooner or later. We kind of hit a good spot in humanity where things were pretty good. I mean, we could have complained about whatever, but we had it pretty good. And then all of a sudden, the uncertainty of it all and the fragility of it all is really being shown. And I do keep hearing that metaphor of the purge being brought to attention. It does seem like that, and a lot of our undealt with traumas in terms of racism and like everything's just coming to the surface, which
and for people individually too, their individual history. But I you probably know it, but I wrote this book a while back.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And it's Awakening from the Daydream, and it's about it's an uptake on this the Wheel of Life teachings that put us in the 6 realms. So I like looking through that lens, and I think we were sort of in a minor league God realm, some of us for a while, a little bit of a bubble. And the other realms sort of encroaching, it's sort of like some of the one thing about the God realms in the Buddhist paradigm is that they're not really the destination for the spiritual path. They're yet another temporary experience,
right?
Even though it can be a very long time, very, very deep. So we've had our moment of relative comfort and ease, superficially anyhow, and there's a feeling of some of that karma is crumbling, so that traditionally in the wheel of life, when people fall out of the God realms, they go straight to the hell realms because they haven't developed any equanimity, they haven't developed any patience, they haven't developed any compassion, real stuff, So they go from something that was very like, you went from a catered event to eating crumbs off the floor in one fell swoop. So who knows what stops we're making along the way. But the basic paradigm is to not really buy into any narrative. So that's why, hardcore yogic people, whatever tradition they're coming from, and all the gurus that we really, you and I both relate to and respect, they're not really buying a narrative as a replacement for the vividness of whatever experience they're having.
Right.
So that's an interesting point to take into this. And what it does is it makes that choiceless. Usually you think, I'm choosing to practice. I'm choosing to view this from an equanimous perspective. I'm choosing to be compassionate. Now it's like the choice element is sort of diminishing, and almost like at the survival level, you have to garner those resources.
Totally. Great point. I've heard you talk about the two primitive beliefs of nihilism and eternalism being just so magnified and amplified right now. Can you please refresh me and the listeners in what you're seeing with that extreme polarity right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of probably like some of your other guests are very trained in their modality that they focused on. So we've shared. I'm also, I play guitar and produce Krishna Das. So in that they call me the Shambhala Walla in that context. So I know the other, and I have the shaman friends and people who are doing devotional practices and Western, Freudians and therapists, and everybody's kind of like chewing through the dilemma from the perspective of their training. So I'm no different that way. So sometimes I'm just like literally like a Buddhist organ grinder. You just turn the hand of the monkey, just starts to talk. So, but of course, these things, the reason I assimilated these things because they made sense to me in the first place. So that's something that is part of the Buddhist paradigm, is if it doesn't make sense to you in the first place, you don't repeat it. You wait till it makes sense and then you repeat it. But so what you've touched on is something part of a slightly bigger description called the veils. And there's that obscure, accurate perception of reality. So it's like a veil, And one of them is primitive beliefs about reality, which is the one. There's two veils. The other one is conflicting emotions, kleshas. So those keep you from seeing the situation, with a kind of prajna eye, with a discernment. And the conflicting emotions is pretty obvious, right? If you're, jealous or angry, that colors everything you see, So one description of Buddhist practice is to dial down, lessen the impact or glue hold of conflicting emotions, kleshas, on our mind stream. The other one, though, is more metaphysical. Like, how do you look when you look at reality and you start to describe it to somebody? And that's where the primitive beliefs, and it could be taken as a little arrogant, to say primitive beliefs. Oh, yours is so much more sophisticated. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
But it's Buddha saying it, so cut him a break, And the two of them are, as you mentioned, Stuart, are nihilism and eternalism. And if you go back to India 2,500 years ago, or if you go to America or the world now, you can still see these are threads of an attempt to solidify our version of reality. One on the negative side, one on the positive side. So eternalism, it's God's will. It's everybody, you know, it's all perfect. It is the way it is. You know, it's really a bliss field. You just don't recognize it. It's always been that way. Your individual little drama is not so important because, which is called Atman, you know, not so important. But if you raise the stakes and you sort of come to the more permanent part of your nature, your soul or whatever, and you recognize the permanent Godhead, then you have some kind of peaceful journey. And that becomes your kind of filter through which you see everything that way. And then the nihilism is the exact opposite, you know, and it's KD and I go back and forth on this quite a lot, actually. You know, he calls me the nihilist, formerly known as Nuji or whatever. And, you know, but actually what's ironic about it is when it comes to disposition, he's actually more of a nihilist and I'm more of an eternalist. Because, you know, I actually believe very much in sort of basic goodness and the kind of fundamental qualities that people have are really basic. I'm sure he believes that too, but he can be kind of grumpy, you know, and but my rap is more nihilistic and his rap would be more eternalistic from that point of view. Do you think so?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think so, without a doubt. I also lean more to the eternalistic view. Like and I've definitely had chapters of my life where kind of early on in taking on these practices and meeting Ram Dass and having some mystical experiences with plant medicines and really getting that undeniable view of that bigger picture that just got so like undeniable that it is a truth, you know, that it's all perfect and it's all just happening, and which has an ultimate truth factor to it. But I think we can grasp to that too quickly and deny the kind of relative truths and all the different shades of gray and whatnot, can't we?
It's a form of premature ejaculation, if you want to look at it cosmically. You just came too early. You didn't stay for the real connect. You just went, it's all perfect. And then you kind of, I call it, the other day, I was talking with Duncan Trussell, you know, and it's like you paint this idealistic imagery of the world on the inside of your blindfold.
Right.
That's what you're looking at, you know. Wow. So removing the blindfold is like, who knows how you describe that reality. And it does have, as far as I can tell, aspects to it other than just, you know, kind of sweetness.
Yes.
It has sweetness, but it has bitterness, it has sharpness, it has edges. Yeah. It has a kind of unnavigated quality, unexpected quality. So between, I think if you could just mix a nihilist and an eternalist, you'd have a pretty good kid. Yeah. You guys have any kids?
Yes, we do. We've got 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's, you know, I know that I have a son who, I'm a granddad, and my granddaughter's 3. She was just 3. And my son is Ethan Nichtern, who's also a Dharma teacher. And it's challenging being home with the kids, right? You don't get much, a lot of younger friends are saying they're not getting much of a break, you know?
Well, you know what? Our lifestyle hasn't changed much through this. Like we live an interesting lifestyle where my wife and I are constantly tag teaming. One minute she's doing all this and teaching and online doing all that, and then I'll be parenting, and we'll tag team. And we actually consciously chose the homeschool route for now. With our 6-year-old. I mean, it's just year 1 and we're going to see how it goes. And we travel a lot, and we're always together, teaching, traveling, retreating. And it was already our lifestyle. It hasn't changed much.
Yeah.
So I am.
How wonderful then. I mean, that you've chosen a path that is kind of being dictated to other people right now, and you chose it already.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that if I was like used to working 9 to 5 and out all the time, and then watching sports all weekend and out with my mates all weekend, I could see that going from that mode to then constantly with the family, constantly with the
Uh,
kids, and it'd be confronting. I'm sure. Like when I look from that vantage point, and I have patience and empathy for that, like that predicament, that kind of jolt of where's my freedom. But yeah, I am hearing more often than not, especially in our community, that people are taking it as a kind of retreat experience. But I also hear of the extreme cases of suicide rates going through the roof and domestic abuse. And
yes.
obviously, when people don't have the tools to kind of communicate properly and just be with intimate relationship, it can show us our shit pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's for whatever reason, what happened to me, I kind of saw this starting to happen 4 months ago. I have a house out on Long Island. I went out there and really hunkered down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a lot of teaching projects coming up, and they were all, I would have been all over the world. I would have been in Japan. I would have been in Thailand. I would have been in, well, we would have been in Maui probably at one point, LA. And I just flipped the switch to put it all online. I said, we just got to go along with what's happening here. So all the programs so far, I'm knocking on wood here, are going very well online, and it's almost surprisingly intimate and kind of people are very much connecting. They're very disciplined with it. They're not taking it for granted. They're not just sitting there like filing their nails while we're doing the classes, so there seems to be some kind of online acceleration of that's the forum, that's where it is right now. So for me, I've been like super busy. It's kind of odd in a way.
And your latest book is really inspiring and really helpful. I found it super refreshing and super switched on. And I think actually really helpful for people right now. Like a lot of the listeners to this would be in similar situations, teachers and facilitators doing a lot of their stuff online now. And I do see a lot of your musings and advice and all the workbook activities helpful for people leaping into this new way of being and getting more creative and more, because you are such a switched on entrepreneur, and you're very eclectic in how you've worked your life. And I think we can learn a lot from that in really being entrepreneurial and creative in these new times where fear can really paralyze us. And especially like I really feel for like studio owners, which have just kind of relied on students coming in through the doors each week just to pay for that week's rent or that month's rent. And then that would be very stressful. So I know a lot of those people listen to this show. It'd be good just for a moment. Do you have any inspiration or wisdom? Of course, I advise check out the book. I'll leave links below. It's epic. Yeah, it's awesome. And I love the audio version as well on Audible.
Thank you. I enjoyed reading.
I love hearing you talk just in general. And so reading the book, I found really helpful. So get onto that. But do you also have any wisdom or advice coming through for people in those situations where they're just trying to pay rent? They don't know what to do.
Well, I think there's a lot in the book that would, of course, I didn't write the book with a pandemic in mind, saying here's what to do, creativity, spirituality, and making a buck during a pandemic. Subtitled, no, the book just got released last fall, so it was kind of interesting. But the basic premise of it, and the basic premises of it, are principles that apply to well-being, that apply to livelihood, that apply to channeling creative energies and being productive with them. So the principles, it's interesting, should apply. You know, that's like if you understand gravity as a principle, it still applies even if you're in a spaceship. By the definition of the gravity is off. You understand what's happening. Why am I floating through this spaceship? It's because what you knew as gravity is functioning differently there, but the principle's still in place. That spaceship is still being pulled by the earth, you know, and by other. So I try to, you know, when I teach this stuff, I try to say principles, not rules. That's kind of one of I do a lot of teacher training and training teachers. You say, if you can understand the principle, then the person can be fluid and adaptable. So that's a very good basic stance for right now, is using certain principles. And one is that impermanence is pervasive. Anyhow, it always was pervasive, but we get, you know, into little niches throughout our lives. When you have lived a long time, you go, wow, man, I reinvented myself like 30 times in the last 50 years or whatever. And so there's a quote in each chapter, and I quoted Bruce Lee in that chapter called, "Be like water, my friend." Do you remember he said that? Be like water.
Yeah.
You know, and the real point of that chapter is it's mixing Buddhist principles with, you know, kind of worldly dharmas. Impermanence is pervasive, so be fluid and adaptable. Now, for many of the studio owners, it's interesting that we have that in common. I've worked with a lot of yoga studio owners. I had karma with the yoga studios, I had karma with the bhaktis, you know, so I've functioned a lot in those universes as a Buddhist teacher and as a musician. So many of these studios, I just finished a teacher training through Samarasa Studio, which is in Echo Park in LA, and they just closed, you know. And so the owner is thinking, well, what's the transition piece here? And, you know, I like to counsel people a lot in this area. You know, my nickname is Nudgy, so I like to nudge people. And the real meaning of that is, like, I feel like they're working on their puzzle, and I'm just kind of looking over their shoulder and, oh, what if you move this piece over there? It's just a natural kind of nudgy quality that I have, and have been, you know, probably annoy some people, and other people might appreciate it, you know. But anyhow, the nickname stuck. So looking over the shoulder, okay, physical premises are jeopardized by this situation. Well, what are the other parts of your offering? And so one part of offering is community, and one part is intellectual property. So anybody who has asked me, I said, don't think twice about it. Immediately migrate towards online community, and think of it as an opportunity, because you should have been doing it 2 years ago anyhow, as an adjunct to your physical plant, because you only can make so much money as a studio owner. I don't know any yoga studio owners who say, man, I'm just rolling in money here.
No, neither.
Even the big ones are not making it from the studio, you know. So, okay, so right away you're doing something you could have done earlier and you should have done earlier. Now you have to do it. And so just get on with it. And then you're biting into a whole new universe for a lot of us. But it's actually an intriguing universe, because teaching is actually, like what we're doing right now, is reaching people all over the world. Now, if you have a little yoga studio in Tribeca, New York, you're not reaching people from all over the world. So the potential of seeing the obstacle as an opportunity is one thing. And acting decisively, I would say, is another thing. You can get stuck in, a lot of suffering comes from wishing things were other than they are. So this is the way it is. And then, you know, how could your offering mutate, migrate, evolve, so that it maps to this current situation, and that you take a survival mentality and turn it into like potential thriving mentality. But at least survive. So the advice I've given to friends is, first of all, take care of yourself physically, period. You know, this is not a time to be risky with your physical well-being. 2, look at your financial situation and be really wakeful about looking at that. Okay, how much money you have? Do you have reserves? Do you need to like really be thinking about getting a grant or whatever, you know, whatever the government's offering? Just get right on that. Don't wait. And the third one is, how's your emotional state? You know, because some people do very well in challenging circumstances, and other people collapse. So this is time for, cultivate some kind of warrior principle, that you're brave and you're willing to address the thing. If that means, going to a farm and growing tomatoes, and, I don't know what it means for different people, but I know for people who have been in physical plants that generate content and teacher content, which is who you say is listening, create your online platform right now, like immediately. Do the research, do the homework, and see if you can't build something that's genuine to you, that you feel good about, and expansive. And so far, so good on that front. We'll see. We'll see how far we'll see how far we dip down into the apocalyptic dimension, before the phoenix rises from the ashes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So back to the kind of, I've heard you talk about the petri dish of our environment. So back to the predicament a lot of people are facing of being at home a lot more. Either that petri dish is just themselves, they're all of a sudden just faced with themselves, in whether it's
the ultimate petri dish is your mind.
Yeah.
It really is.
Or all of a sudden they're with their partner 24/7 and or their kids 24/7. So ways to really work with that petri dish, of course, have a practice. But if people are listening to this and they're just kind of getting a practice happening, it's not really an accessible tool where they can just get it as soon as they're feeling the reactivity, the anger, the fear, the doubt. It's a new practice. Can you speak to that practitioner where they're vibing off this stuff, they're starting to get it? In those moments where that reactivity is just so seductive, and again, it's either tempting to bypass it and just suppress it and just build it up until that's an apocalypse, or just run rampant, reacting like a maniac.
Well, I think you've got a clear line on the thing. There's from the micro to the macro. That's always true. I mean, so I spend quite a lot of time introducing Dharma teachings to relative newcomers. I like being on that front edge of the thing, so that you're checking that you're making sure you're saying something that's accessible and that regular people can understand what the hell you're talking about. I've never been satisfied with our communities just preaching to ourselves, the niche kind of quality of it.
Yeah,
I like popular. I like the big world, and and that correlated with my studies with Trungpa Rinpoche, who also liked the big world, and kind of advocated taking this stuff out into the big world. So that's been my orientation. So, there's been some great one-liners. Start where you are. That's, people think spiritual practice might be kind of highfalutin or something like that. So what is it? Oh, I'll become this or that. They have some idealized version of themselves, which is a way of torturing yourself, basically. If you want to really feel bad, get a mirror that makes you look perfect. And then look at a real mirror. Like one's a funhouse mirror and the other one is the real mirror. So I think starting where you are is really important, just to, and like just basic things like it's workable. Understand that the situation as it is fundamentally workable. You have the tools, you have the resources. Going along with that, ideas like make friends with yourself. Don't set up another battlefield, which is you against you. And I call it two midgets wrestling. It's like don't split yourself in two parts and then fight it out. So making friends with yourself, gentleness, curiosity, inquisitiveness. These are like really the golden spiritual foundations for any practice that anybody's going to do. Whatever practice, and then find something you're drawn to. I think there's no one size fits all in this area. People have karma with different lineages, different teachers. Find something that makes sense to you, that resonates with you, and that actually you feel magnetized by the community and the teachers. And we in Buddhism, we say the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So from Maui and things, like the Sangha is super important, that you have people you can share the journey with. So these are the basics, and get good, clear instructions. Whatever it is you're doing, make sure you have some kind of clear idea, so you're not, I call it the Stevie Wonder and the Pinata approach. Right? You're being spun around, you weren't able to see in the first place, right. And now you have a bat in your hands. It's not good. So get good clarity. There are people around who can help. They have different voices. It's amazing how different people resonate with different things. But I think you could take some of the time that you have on your hands now and take care of yourself in that way. Take care of yourself physically, but also emotionally, psychologically. Doing some kind of meditation or some kind of practice where you're spending time with yourself, not to solve the big problems, but just to kind of tune in, feel some kind of well-being that is not really dependent on external circumstances, because it's not. You could just sit still. You know this, you're a yogi. You could just sit still and you feel like, hey, I feel pretty good. I'm in a room, folks. I just had an orange and a bowl of oatmeal and I'm fine. That, to me, that's what a yogi is. Not somebody who can bend themselves into a pretzel shape.
Yeah.
They feel fine with very little.
Totally. Now you touched upon the battle between our two selves, and it's a prevalent one. It's a big trap, and I've had periods of it as a yogi, trying to perfect all the various methods and whatnot. And I think it's a thick trap, even in terms of the life improvement, self-improvement, self-help realm of perfectionism. So do you feel there's a kind of middle ground in which we're not we're not copping out and just the kind of the bypass in terms of I'm perfect as I am, it's totally fine. that kind of extreme of just not doing any work, and then the other extreme of being just eternalism, and then sort of, and then being the other extreme of being totally self-obsessed and constantly doing self-care, constantly self-examining, constantly trying to improve in that more narcissistic way. I think that's becoming actually quite prevalent. Possibly social media is playing a part of that. That whole trip. Wow. I do know it's a seductive one, and I've been hearing from quite a few folks, like they've fallen into kind of a leadership role. They're a tantric teacher, they're a sexual mastery teacher, they're ayahuasca facilitator. Like, fuck, what have I got myself into? I'm like, I'm the leader of the community now, and I thought I had my shit together, and fuck, I'm deep in it. And I did go on a big tangent there, but I think what I'm coming to is this can be the middle way of doing the work at the same time, not being aware of that trap of becoming self-obsessive at the same time, not self-denying. Can you speak to that kind of maybe middle way?
Well, again, I told you, I often quote Trungpa Rinpoche just as a kind of seminal thinker, and there was something about a gift there about voicing certain things in a way that's kind of quite incisive and folksy at the same time. So like, he's the one who said first thought, best thought. So I kind of just do that a lot.
Right.
It's actually a pretty cool single instruction to follow. Not to let the mind just unravel, and then at the end of it, you find yourself lost in the woods with a ball of yarn and it's not even attached to the tree you left in the first place. So first thought, best thought. But here's So when you started saying that, I thought, well, here's another thing you said. And I love this quote. So it's this: enlightenment is ego's final disappointment.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, because we think there's going to be, God, I did a workshop with Duncan Trussell Friday night, who I love to talk to. He's just so bright and, and thoughtful.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And we got into, somebody was asking about the future and what's going to happen in the future with virtual reality and all these kind of things. So we got into it a little bit. And one thing he said is there's going to be AIs based on you. There's going to be a Stuart AI that's cooler, brighter, but has your imprint. It'd be like Stuart 2.0 or David 2.0. And people are going to go, I don't know, that bio Stuart, I don't really want to talk to him. I want to talk to AI 2.0. And we're going to be replaced by our own kind of digital footprint in a way.
Wow.
So, that's the thing, is we're trying to tripwire into 2.0. But the thing that's missing there is, one, is the sense of humor is totally lacking. Would you agree?
Totally.
Yeah. So that perfectionism is usually not very playful. Two, there's humility kind of not really being understood. Some kind of softness. And if you do find yourself in a leadership role, I follow this. Rinpoche used to say that the universal emperor, the universal monarch, is a grain of sand. And because your sense of self-importance is so tiny and has been so reduced, the universe is very vast and open. Looks huge, and you kind of can see with clarity. So it's the third thing I think of is, like, one thing about people who are perfectionists, they usually have good discipline. They're really hard workers. Whereas eternalists are more lazy a little bit, like, this is good enough. It's good the way it is. I'm a little bit on the lazier side. So I don't really have a big aspiration to be some kind of famous Dharma teacher. And, but on the other hand, if you're in a situation and you're loyal and, devoted to the path that you chose, and if you do need to lead and you're naturally in that situation, you could humbly just kind of do your best and actually provide help and guidance and leadership for other people without making too big a drama about it. And that's where this is like a medley of Motown here. Your guess is as good as mine is another one. So if you can lead from that perspective, that you leave room for people's intelligence and for their exploration, and that you can shut up sometimes and let them figure stuff out too, and recognize that you're also learning from them. Always. Every time you're with somebody, even a squirrel, you're learning from them.
Totally.
Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question at all or not.
No, big time. I think I would just add to that in the simplicity of continuing a self-practice, because ever so often one gets so caught up in their new role of teaching, facilitating, and they actually totally drop their own daily practice. So just that staple of a daily practice to check in and just look into that. Humility is a deep one as well. I think that especially with a lot of the younger teachers, that humility piece, I think, for at least for a period of time. I mean, time works its way, and we'll get shown where we need to just soften and be humbled. Like, life will teach us that inevitably. I do feel that truly. But,
well, and Stuart, in the Buddhist way, you always have your teachers who give you various degrees of feedback. You always have that.
Well, I think that's a common missing piece right now, because a lot of younger teachers actually don't have.
They skip that step.
To check in.
They skip that step.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're missing a great opportunity, because if you can find people who have, really been trained, and developed some understanding in exactly the field that you're looking for, that's, very valuable. And then the other thing is Sangha, which is your peers. So a lot of people don't feel they have peers, and they don't feel they have guides. And, that's a little bit like fishing without a pole. you're missing some real, I always have peers that I check. I have a couple of good friends who are, like they do in the satsang, with Ram Dass's community, old people who've been around long enough to call each other and also to support each other on the journey. And then I always try to have some, somebody giving me harder feedback or the one thing about a teacher is they can give you more support than you can give yourself sometimes. They go, you know what? Go. Do it. Keep going. Or, whoa.
Yeah, I do appreciate that about the Buddhist communities, the Buddhist Sangha. There seems to be a lot more of that than in the yoga communities. It's so easy to, like anyone can jump into a yoga teacher training and become a teacher within a couple weeks for a lot of cases right now, having not possibly gone through the training and the kind of checking in with a skillful teacher and the accountability kind of check-in commonly lacks in the yoga communities. Have you seen that?
Well, here's the thing about being 72 and involved with this scene for 50 years. Because I met Trungpa Rinpoche in 1970, and that I was seriously into it from then on, and then a lot of iteration. So I feel like I've seen a lot of variations at a certain point, and comings and goings. Yoga, I was in a yoga studio when I met Trungpa Rinpoche. He came to a yoga studio in Boston and gave his first workshop that I took was right there. I've had karma I've had a lot of yogi friends. I've taught a lot in the yoga community. So I feel like I've also kind of counseled yoga studio owners who've gone in and out of business. And, so yoga wasn't that popular at a certain point, it wasn't a big problem, but then it got really popular. And I think I don't think it's growing right now. You could tell me better than that, but I have a feeling it's, not an expansive phase right now. Would you say?
I would agree. Yeah. I would agree.
It's got legs to it. It lasted 5,000 years already, so you'd think it's going to have some kind of longevity. But in any case, it's so great to have teachers. Why wouldn't somebody want that? Like you go, I've been studying Tai Chi for 20 years with Sat Han here right in New York City, right on 23rd Street, and hidden, in plain sight there. He teaches right out of his house. And I said, boy, every time I've been there, I've gone for a private class pretty much every 2 weeks for years. And I said, every time I leave there, I feel better than when I got there. And the resonant, I feel like maybe I got something was illuminated. Like, for example, he goes, after like 15 years, hey, David, your head is bent forward. It's probably from being tall and kind of like, or just postural adjustment. So even when you're doing these practices, just kind of like let your head lift up at your full height. And that's like 15 years later. Why didn't you tell me that on day one? But it changed, as a great yoga teacher can. It changed your relationship to your physicality, which then you find you're not getting as tired. You get injured less, all the wonderful things. So yoga is a wonderful thing. And there are great teachers around there. And so maybe the sense of lineages, which is so strong in Buddhism, is you really appreciate, the lineage. Like my lineage goes back 1,000 years. I can name every teacher for 1,000 years. And martial arts has more of that. But yoga, maybe not so much. Maybe it's, you take the thing and you run off with it, But I don't know. The short answer to that is, I know a lot of yogis can't meditate worth their damn.
Right.
I hope they don't call me up angry and upset that I said that.
No,
but
it's true.
They don't want to meditate. They don't want to be still. They don't want to really taste their mind in the raw state of like non-manipulation. So Buddhism is an interesting complement for that kind of mindfulness meditation or awareness meditation that's not based on bliss, not based on God realm, Devaloka stuff, but just working with the mind with the same precision that you work with the body is probably a great marriage. And when you look at the mind directly, you'll see everything. It's there's nothing hidden at that point if you can look.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and it is a common perception in the yoga community that there's yoga and then there's meditation, two different things, but they're intertwined. I mean, even if we look at the physical practice of asana, in one way, in a very classic way, it's really just preparation for a easier seat, a steadier, more relaxed seat, even just the fundamentals of why one does asana, so you can sit more comfortably and meditate more easily and clear the subtle energy, so there's less veils, and you can kind of get to the point more easily. But it is interesting how common that perception is, that I either do my yoga or I do meditation. So it'd be interesting to see how that unfolds and maybe evolves as yoga in the West continues to just do its thing.
Well, it's one of the 8 limbs, isn't it? I mean, it's part of the tradition.
I know.
And, you know, I remember doing a record with my Dharma Moon label at the time, and there was a chant that was on it, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. That's pretty good. That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, how do you have the mind settle? And that's a difference of opinion. Some people say you can force it to settle down with breathing exercises, or, you know, or manipulation of the nervous system, or manipulation of consciousness. So the Buddhists would just say, if you leave some space, it's going to settle down. It's kind of like stop shaking the pot. So stillness is really has its own complete potency to it. You know, just leaving it alone for a while, not manipulating it, not trying to change it, not trying to improve it even.
Yeah. So back to your latest book before we wrap this up, David. Again, just totally a big fan of it. I've read the book and then listened to the audio, and it's been really, really helpful. Have you had any pushback on
that makes Grandpa happy?
Have you had any pushback on the titling and the talking about making a buck? Because I've definitely seen pushback in the spiritual community with any teachers that are making a buck, and I'd love to hear.
I put a dollar bill right on the cover.
Oh, I know,
and here's I said, have a monastery up in the mountains here, and have people coming down from the monastery into the world, re-entering the world, which is the part of the journey. You go up the mountain, you study, you come back down the mountain, and you have your family, and you have your work and your money. So money, and what's ironic is the first seminar that I went to from Trungpa Rinpoche in 1970 at that Boston Street was called Work, Sex, and Money. That was actually the name of it. And there's a book called Work, Sex, and Money from those seminars. So his question is sex dirty? No. Is money dirty? No. How you deal with it can be, toxic or healthy, like anything else. So that's the general view that I've taken since then, basically. I think I had that view already. And when people get all dainty about finances and stuff like that, I go, what's behind that? Really, what's behind that? What there's some kind of entitlement, actually, that's often behind it, or fear, it could be. So everybody else in this world gets paid a reasonable, a junior high school teacher, you don't see yogis going, why are you taking money for teaching children? Nobody does that. But if you teach yoga or meditation, people go, how could you take money for that? I go like, well, it's a useful service. It's right livelihood. It's right there in the Eightfold Path. And so a lot of the book is about ethics and having a good, healthy relationship to livelihood, as opposed to a greedy, sloppy relationship to it. But for me, I think I was trying to make a statement that if you think that there's two worlds that you're living in, and one foot's on one side of the canyon, the other side's the other canyon, you better hope there's not an earthquake. you know. So I see it as one world. I really do. I was encouraged in that view, but I really think I see it naturally that way. And you know what's beautiful is the Ram Dass retreats. They're very healthy about financials aspect of it. It's very clean. It's not like, oh, let's see how we can get 1,000 more people. It's just sane, and they pay their bills. And Krishna Das is like that. He pays what is agreed to. I think it's a great place for somebody to develop their ethics and their awareness and their mindfulness in everyday lives. And guess what? We're creative people. Maybe you have some great ideas that you can turn into something, and maybe that generates wealth as a byproduct. So that's different than glomming onto the wealth as a solution to your subtler problems. It's not going to necessarily clean you up.
Yeah, that's the shift, isn't it? I mean, most of us have been socialized to identify with the wealth so thickly, so deeply. So that shift of being sophisticated and skillful and mindful and cleaning up the ethical ground in which we deal with money at the same time. It is, I guess that's where it's slippery, because we know how seductive money is, and the kind of potential ego trips that can come with money. And if we start to come into a lot of money and start to get successful, the traps of greed and whatnot will be shown. And it's a great terrain for practice, isn't it? Each time, if those kleshas or obstacles or traps keep arising, money is a great arena for showing us where we still got work to do, I think.
All of it's a subtle form of theism. If you think something's going to save you, fundamentally, you're fucked, basically. Can I say that in Australia? Sorry.
Yeah, totally.
It's okay. And that's what we attach onto something. And you can, the great thing, again, last iteration from Trungpa Rinpoche, cutting through spiritual materialism. That was the most valuable thrust of his early teachings, is that you could just take that attitude right into the spiritual domain and just turn that into like, oh, okay, I've got my game going on there really, really well. And, so that can become materialistic. Things like, fame and recognition. And so in the old days, you'd renounce all that. You'd go like, I'm just chucking it, shave my head off, put on the robes, go around begging. There was a logic to it. But that's a kind of introductory path in a way, because even the monasteries, they need money, they need food. Then they end up just trying to cultivate wealthy patrons and stuff. I like the right livelihood model. That somebody like you've developed a lot of experience teaching, and you might have had an idea about this podcast. You might figure out how to monetize this podcast and pay for your family's livelihood and take a trip every once in a while. So to me, we're in that phase of the thing. We're coming down. Now, if you're in the process of you're very attached to that stuff, that's why I said, well, maybe if somebody's like really good at making a buck, they could focus on the spiritual instructions in the book. And then if you're trapped into any of those other two, creativity is the fundamental force to just break loose and just see what's up now. What should you be doing now? Creativity is actually the bomb. It's the fundamental act. It has no causality to it.
Yeah, I've been hearing that from so many people during this whole COVID thing, where they've been in retreat, picking up things they haven't done in years, picking up the guitar, picking up the instrument, the art, whatever it may be, and getting creative again. And it's lighting people up in beautiful ways. We need to be creative, don't we, in one way or another?
Yeah. Well, I think you can be creative in business. It's called entrepreneurial energy. Yeah. And I think you can be creative about how you present the Dharma, and so I guess I'm proposing a view where these three things kind of feed off of each other in a healthier way. And then as you know, there's a workbook in there, so you can kind of like answer some of your own questions, which is can be a great process of just writing something down and going through re-asking some fundamental questions like, what the hell do I really want to do?
Mm.
You know, okay, there's an epidemic, your livelihood's cut off. You may get desperate and say, I got to jump in and do this or that, the other thing. But wait, take 1 minute, one evening, and write down, what would I really like to do? And, you know, it's hard for us to ask that question because we get engaged karmically, and then one thing leads to another to another. So what would you really like to do?
I'm doing what I would really like to do. Thank you for asking. I really
Awesome.
am. I'm stoked. I really am. I remember years ago, I got deep into that process of like designing my life, you know, and that like write it all down, get fucking clear on it, and give it energy, and the shit you're not happy about, like, let it go or work on it. And I really got deep into that years ago, and it's amazing how the things I did put my attention to did actually manifest. They did unfold, and now it's more of a just kind of day-to-day listening, you know, tuning in and listening, and it's less of a willful, like over, you know, more of just a subtle, like tuning in, listening, letting go of what's not really feeding my heart and my family, and just putting effort in the right direction. More of a constant steering and re-steering and tuning kind of thing. Yeah.
So you're kind of a manifester from the point of view of this book.
I think so. Yeah.
You've kind of gone through the aspirant stage, done the inquiry, readjusted the saddle on the horse, and now you're riding, and you're making like subtler tweaks.
Yeah.
And then there are times when the whole thing just goes like, and you have to just recalibrate.
Yeah.
So that's what creativity is to me, is like you are willing to allow. Like creativity is something you have to allow it to happen. It's like, you know, I've been trying to explain this to people, but like, I don't write music as far as I'm concerned. I allow music.
Yeah.
So even sometimes could have a whole song in a dream. Whole song. Bridge, everything. Fade.
Wow.
Drum pattern, bass part. Wake up and go, okay. You allowed that, and you also allowed yourself to remember it, and you allowed yourself to activate it. And then activating is discipline. You're obviously a disciplined person, but you could have a lot of creativity but not a lot of discipline, and that won't get you into the manifestation level.
Right.
And then along the way, there's certain real life skills that everybody's sharpening, like how to improve your offering, how to compete skillfully, how to set up the tools that you need, how to set up the support systems, and I get into all that in the book. So basically, whatever you need help with, that's what the idea of the book is. Some people might be very strong in certain parts of this; they don't really need so much advice in that area. But when you find people who are very integrated in all, you know, in these three ways, I call that a manifester. Those are the people who should be doing the coaching for the other people who are doing the process. So that's a natural thing, right? I'm sure you've had your coaches along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly have. I'm blessed. I love teachers. You know, I think, and I've also noticed when, you know, practice. I had Julian Lage on my podcast, who's an incredible guitar player, young guitar player, and he said, I practiced 10 hours a day when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And I went like, oh man. Oh my goodness. And you see it, you know. So these are all, you know, resources. And here's the thing I don't know who your audience is. I'm trying to visualize them out there. Are they mostly in Australia, or they're all over the world?
No, all around the place.
So you kind of seeped out into the
yeah, well, we spend outside of COVID times, we spend about half of our year in California and Hawaii and even Mexico.
Wow, what a life.
Bali. So Yeah, all around the place, but mainly Australia. Yeah,
Is your wife a yoga teacher?
she is. Yeah.
So that's a big part of your family. Like you have like a family lineage in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Your family
And
is a little container for those practices.
that's right, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
that's how it used to be.
mhm,
That's kind of a cool thing. And
yeah.
your kids will probably, pick up on some part of it.
Well, there are because we teach quite a bit of online, and we teach online family classes as well. So they're already totally involved.
Yeah. And how's
Yeah.
that going? How's taking it online been going? You used to travel a lot. Is it good?
Good, because we've been doing it for years, actually.
Oh,
Especially my wife Jo. She was teaching on the first online yoga school. Have
uh,
you heard of Yoga Glow?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, she's part of that.
Yeah, so she was the first teacher on that, and she was given so much shit for teaching on there. Everyone was just giving her so much crap, and how can you make the yoga teachings online? It'll dilute the effectiveness of it, and really giving her crap. And it took
Yeah.
a few, like probably a good 5 years before other teachers started to loosen up on that stance and started to get the validity of it and where we're going. And so she was
Yeah.
really ahead of the curve. And
There you go.
so I kind of learnt from her and then started doing online stuff as well
Okay, so
some
you had a
years
head
ago.
start.
Yeah, a bit of a head start. So we enjoy it. We love it. And of course, there's nothing quite like physical connection, the physical sangha. Like I do love it. Like lately,
Yeah.
yoga studios have just opened up here,
Oh,
and
have
it's
they?
yeah. Like like in terms of COVID stats and all that, we've been very. I mean, who really knows? But it seems to have been the case that we've been pretty lucky here. The rates haven't been
Uh,
crazy. So they've opened up some businesses, some yoga schools, and I've been
but I heard
teaching that.
Victoria is going back the other way. No?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. So we got to be careful. We can't be
Yeah.
stupid about it.
Yeah.
But it's been beautiful, being back in
Oh.
the physical community, and
Mm.
I am cherishing that. At the
Yeah.
same time, there's a lot we can do with this online thing, and I
Yeah.
really do enjoy it. And it's going to be interesting where we go in the near future and the not so
Mm.
near future. Very interesting times, huh?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we decided Friday night with me and Duncan was that somebody asked about the future. And I said, well, we're moving towards the future, but the future is also moving towards us. It's a strange way of thinking about it. And it may be that the future is moving towards us more powerfully than we're moving towards the future right now.
Right. Wow.
And, so that means being kind of nimble and receptive might be a great virtue right now. And, rather than being like, okay, 6 months from now, it's going to be this, 9 months, it's going to be that. Nobody knows.
Right.
Nobody really knows. And, it's interesting because we know oracles and we know people who are like, the forecasters. I don't believe any of them right now.
No, none of them know.
Well, it fits with larger patterns of decay and disruption and phoenix arising from the ashes and cycles of history and stuff that you could read. But, I think you want to be careful connecting to prophecy right now. And almost the lesson is dial a lot of that mental activity down to the point where you can really be very, very present. Like almost extreme shamatha right now, like double, triple X mindfulness.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like for people's well-being, they need that, because otherwise, once the mind starts looking into the future for the prophecy, you also are going to see the future for the anxiety. And so if you can stabilize your awareness in the present, that seems to be maybe a good strategy for right now. Yeah.
David, do you feel like closing, with that being said, do you feel like closing this with a short contemplative or Dharma practice to really, I mean, you did it just then with your words, you have a potency, you have to cut straight to the chase, but just to feed on that, and then we'll just wrap it up to help people get that triple X mindfulness. straight to the present moment awareness.
Well, the twin sister of that, and I think this is a classical Buddhist teaching, is when you have some kind of fruit of your practice, you immediately offer it out. It's called the dedication of merit, dedicating the merit or benefit. It's very traditional to do it before you practice. You aspire to help others. After you finish whatever practice, whatever benefit there is, you offer it back to others. So this is a chant that's called the 4 Brahma Viharas, the abode of Brahma, the higher realms are cultivated by cultivating these 4 qualities. And they're basically loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, taking joy in the happiness of others, and equanimity, which is maintaining some kind of stability and balance. You cultivate those 4. Each one can be cultivated, like metta, loving kindness, can be cultivated in that practice. If you do metta practice, you're cultivating that one. There's Tonglen and all kinds of compassion practices. There's, equanimity practices. They're all contemplative, basically, but just to target them, maybe for some future day to go in deeper into each of these, there's just a chant, which I'll just say it, and people can, experience it. And there's many different translations of this, so this is the one we're using now. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings experience joy and the happiness of others. May all beings remain in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and ignorance.
Thank you so much, David.
Yeah.
You're a beautiful man.
Thank you.
You
That's
so
very
much
sweet.
for what you're offering the world, and thank you for your time as well. It's a real honor, a real delight.
Well, and thank you for including me and for reconnecting. It's a great to see you and be with you. So, and lots of good wishes for all of the folks out there who are listening.
Yeah.
And I think helping other people is a good second piece to the mindfulness.
Totally.
Just see what you can do to help, and then you become a little less self-obsessed.
Beautiful.
So all the best to your family, and hope that we stay in touch. Okay.
Thank you, David. Until next time, take care.
Okay. Bye, everyone.